Alright, so now we want to start really setting this up. We're eventually going to do some more adjustments using our masks and all that kind of stuff, but I want to start getting more of the final image set up of what we want this thing to look like. So I'm going to go back to my base image. I'm going to turn all of my originals off, and we're going to just start with this one. This is our watercolor background. Our rendered watercolor background, and again we can really choose any background we want, but I'm just simply going to start with this one. And again, the great thing is we can just switch out backgrounds or on underneath all of the effects that we're going to essentially stack on top of each other, and really get into some fun stuff that way. So the first thing I really want to get into is our line work, and so you can see, again, we had exported out several different lines. So we have, this is just our very basic line, nothing special at all, just very computer drawn lines. Then we did the same thing, but it was lines with profiles, which we can use. We have this very sketchy charcoal effect. Similarly, let me pull this one up here, keep them together. I have a pencil effect. So this one's a little softer of a touch, but still a very hand looking one. Then we're going to have some additional effects like these extensions, and we're also going to have our hidden. And again, these last two, the extensions and the hidden lines, are going to be more of like that hand-drawn messiness to our drawing that we want to capture. So we're really going to composite even just our line types to start giving a nice effect to our drawing. So let's just choose one to go with. We can go ahead and start with this charcoal-looking one. Even though it's fairly dark, we can always play with the opacities and all that kind of stuff. And so on the charcoal, what we want to do is set this to multiply. I'm going to turn off all my other lines. So we just have the charcoal on. It's set to multiply. And we're going to change the opacity. Maybe we'll come down to like 40% or so. And zoom into actual pixels, you can see this has a really nice effect that it looks like it's a very hand-drawn drawing. And so here's where we can make some decisions. As you can see, we have our lines stacked on top of our base image, which is where we want it to be. But you can see that we have lines that are moving over our landscape. And I'm actually usually okay with that, because the idea is that we drew this whole thing by hand and then we came back in and painted over top of these lines. So the fact those lines exist are to me, I think are a good thing. You can see it happens here with the bracket beyond. But if you don't like it, that's one of the reasons why we created this vegetation mask. I can even come up here to the lines, again, control-click my vegetation mask, and then apply a mask to this whole group. You can see it did it backwards, but easy enough. Just Control-I switches the black and the white. So you can see now that my lines no longer go over my vegetation. You can see if I disable the mask, you can see the lines reappear, or enabling it, the lines go away just at the vegetation. So really it's your call of what you're looking to do, how you want it to be. And maybe we can leave that there and just leave it disabled and just enable it when we want. So I think we're just going to leave it this way for right now. I'm going to go ahead and save. Always a good reminder to save often. And so the next thing we want to get into is maybe we can play with these extensions. And we don't necessarily want this to be a very heavy line. So again, we're going to come in here, we can do multiply, but maybe this time we bring our opacity way down, maybe to like 13 somewhere between 10 and 15%. Let's try 15% for now, and you can see zooming into actual size that we now have these random lines that are just kind of everywhere. It gives you a little bit more of that hand effect. You could even run a filter on that if you wanted to. I'm gonna hit Control J to make a copy of the extension layer, and we're gonna come in here and do filter, filter, distort, and ripple. And you can see that even on here, it's going to give you this slightly more ripply hand effect. You know, maybe we don't want it as much. Maybe, you know, something like that. So it's feels a little more hand drawn. You can select OK, and we'll let that process. You can see that, you know, zooming in, that it just again gives it just a little bit more of a hand drawn effect. So maybe we'll leave that one like that. I'm going to turn this one off real quick for right now, and we're going to go to our hidden lines. And this one is, again, it's going to be really the same thing. We're going to go ahead and do multiply, and you can see it's just a lot of lines, and maybe this one's going down, you know, similar. You don't want it really a whole lot, you know, even if it's never really seen, that's probably not a bad thing. We just want the hint of it. So we keep that pretty low. So you can see that there's just these lines that exist that were guidelines in us drawing, and that's really the idea. So now if we start putting everything together, you can see that now this is our composited line group. We go to actual pixels, and you can see it has a really nice effect of what a hand drawing might look like to go with our watercolor effect. The next thing we want to do is we're going to give this just a little bit of a paper texture. So I'm going to make a new layer. We can call this paper texture, and we just want to fill this in with a nice gray. Let's say something like a 128 by 128 by 128, nice medium gray, and Alt backspace fills it in. And so now we just want to come over to our filter, and we're going to go to texture and texturizer, and we just want to use this texturizer here. The scaling, it's hard to say depending on how big your project is. I'm actually going to bump this up quite a bit to say 400. You can mess with 200% is the largest we can go, but we can always scale once we make it if we need to. You know, you can change the relief and make this like very bumpy or a little smoother. You know, something around a 4 usually works pretty well. So you can see that's kind of our texture. I actually want to double the size of this. I want the texture just to be a little bit bigger. So you can see our texture sitting there. And then we just want to overlay this our model, or overlay our drawing. It's always going to want to be the topmost layer because you want everything underneath it to have this effect to it. So we're just going to come to overlay, and we're going to drop the opacity down to, I don't know, say 70%. And now you'll see that it looks like we have this watercolory paper that it's sitting on. And again, you can export out images with and without it to see which one you like better. It definitely gives a nice texture to the drawing. And the next great little trick that will really add some watercolory life to this is we're going to add what's called some splatter to the image. And Splatter really is nothing more than finding these kinds of images and having a library of just these random watercolor splatter images will really make things a lot easier. You can find things that are warmer in color, or something that might be cooler like this. And the size of them really doesn't matter, but you'll see the effect that it's going to have. So let's go ahead and we'll add some of these in. So we'll add several of these in, just like everything else. We can really find some just different ones and get different effects and see what we like best. Alright, so I have a bunch of these layers. I'm just going to come in and just drop them into here. I group all these and call them splatter. And really all we need to do right now, zoom out a little bit, is I'm going to go quickly individually on each one, and you'll get to see what each one looks like. And you'll see the effects that each one has. And we just want to be able to cover our drawing. So it doesn't matter how big or small it was when it came in. We're just going to overlay this over a whole drawing, and you'll see the different effects that we get, and simply choose the one that we like best. So just quickly do this, and you can see that we're having a range of colors and sizes, and it'll give us different effects from warm images to cooler images, and this is always a good one because it just has various colors, some warm, some cooler. This tends to be one of the ones I think works better. And so all we're going to do is let's turn all of them off but one. And again, coming back to the group layer, we're going to actually change this to vivid light, and we're going to drop the opacity pretty far down, say maybe like 25 to 40%, really whatever works best. And if you're not seeing it already, what's really happening is it's giving you these color splotches throughout. If I turn the layer on and off, you can see how there's some yellows here, there's some reds here, and that really just correlates back to, if I undo what we did, these colors. You can see the yellows and the reds, and it's just really overlaying it like it's this this kind of watercolory effect. It's really nice. Then you can see if I turn that one off and turn this one on, this one's actually really nice because it has the blue and the oranges. So the oranges are running right here through the middle, the bluers are around. Again, if I undo it, you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So these oranges and blues and purples are really overlaying on top of giving a nice effect on top of this drawing. That one's actually really nice. So maybe we'll come back to that one. So here's some blues, so it's giving a nice cool feel to this image. Here's some oranges and yellows, so it's a little bit of a warmer color. So you can see how quickly we can really change the mood and the feeling of this image to whatever it is we want it to do. Here's the one that's a little more multicolored, if you can see it here. This is the one I tend to really like because it gives a lot of variation to it. You have your blues and your greens to your reds and your purples. I always think this one has a very nice effect. So I'm not sure which one I like better. I mean, this one actually really gives it a nice watercolor effect with those broader strokes. Though I think I'm going to stick with this one for now. And again, we can always revisit this as to which one that we want to use as our final one, or even export out several of them to see what works best. Well, I think our image is really coming along. Next, we're going to really work on our shade and our shadow layers that we messed with, and start getting that in. And then I think we're going to start tweaking some of the base colors to finish up our image. And we'll do some of that in our next videos.